Authoress by Oleanderhoney. Chapter 3. Bond. Summary. Jane makes good on her promise. Mr. Science Man, 2:45 p.m. Bored. Entertain me. S.H. 2:46 p.m. Jane. 2:46 p.m. Jane. 2:47 p.m. Jane. Sent. 2:48 p.m. Sherlock at work. Mr. Science Man, 2:48 p.m. But there's nothing to do here. Can I come there? Sent. 2:49 p.m. No, don't you even dare. Mr. Science Man, 2:51 p.m. I thought I fixed your phone. Why do you still insist on having terrible grammar? Sent. 2:55 p.m. Maybe it's a conspiracy? I do these things just to irritate you. I could use emoticons to be extra cruel. Mr. Science Man, 2:56 p.m. What in the world is an emoticon? Sent. 2:58 p.m. Wink face. Mr. Science Man, 3:01 p.m. Jane. Sent. 3:01 p.m. Evil smile. Mr. Science Man, 3:03 p.m. Jane, those are just symbols. Sent. 3:04 p.m. No, they're not, they're faces. Tongue face. Mr. Science Man, 3:04 p.m. Oh God, forget I asked. Sent. 3:05 p.m. Laughing face. 3:05 p.m. Screaming face. 3:05 p.m. Surprised face. Mr. Science Man, 3:06 p.m. Stop. Sent. 3:08 p.m. Evil tongue face. Mr. Science Man, 3:09 p.m. Stop. Sent. 3:10 p.m. Strange face. Or what? Mr. Science Man, 3:10 p.m. All right, you forced me into this. Sent. 3:11 p.m. Sherlock? 3:25 p.m. Hey. 3:40 p.m. Okay, fine. There. Is that better? All nice and grammatically correct. Sent. 3:45 p.m. Sherlock? Mr. Science Man, 3:46 p.m. It's too late, Jane. I asked you nicely. Sent. 3:47 p.m. What did you do? Sent. 3:53 p.m. Sherlock? Mr. Science Man, 4:05 p.m. Evil smile. When Jane ascended the 17 steps up to the flat 45 minutes later, she had a sinking feeling in her gut, mostly due to the strong smell of her beloved English breakfast permeating the hall. When she opened the door, she was nearly bowled over by the aroma. She makes her way into the kitchen to assess the damage. Used tea bags litter the worktop like carcasses, their bodies crushed and mangled almost beyond recognition. The empty box sits bereft next to the stove, and Jane picks it up, crestfallen. She looks around and sees a flask bubbling merrily over a Bunsen burner, and the culprit, the murderer himself, was sitting in front of it, jotting down notes. You are a monster, Jane says, and tosses the box in the bin. Oh, hello, Jane. Have a good day. Sherlock asks casually, not bothering to look up. "What have you done?" Jane asks, coming over to peer into the flask warily. "Experiment. I'm attempting to isolate the caffeine from your black tea." "And that required all 15 tea bags?" "Well, no, but—" "Wait, you count your tea bags?" Sherlock asks with a smirk, finally looking up. Jane decides not to answer this. So what if she does? She hates when she runs out and she doesn't get her evening cuppa. Like now, for instance. "You know I always have a cup of tea when I get home from the surgery," Jane says, crossing her arms. "I never took you for being deliberately cruel, Sherlock Holmes." "Sociopath, Jane," Sherlock answers good-naturedly and gets to his feet. He comes over and practically looms over her. "That will teach you to take my threats more seriously in the future." She goes to say something when she's cut off by a loud sniff from Sherlock. She closes her mouth and looks at him more carefully. His eyes are slightly glassy and rimmed, and he looks more pale than usual. When he sniffs subconsciously, for the second time, Jane smirks. She couldn't call herself a doctor if she didn't recognize the beginning symptoms of flu when she saw them. "You're right. How silly of me," she says, and marches out of the kitchen. She tries not to laugh at the sucker-punched look on Sherlock's face, and makes her way upstairs to wait. A few hours later, Sherlock's slightly hoarse voice floats up from downstairs. "Jane?" Jane smirks. "Yes, Sherlock?" she says casually. "Do we—" He clears his throat. "Do we have any throat lozenges?" Checking the airing cupboard. I have an oak toad in there on the shelf," she calls. He doesn't answer back, and she wonders if he even knows where the airing cupboard is. She sniggers to herself. The brat probably deleted it. Jane gives him another 20 minutes before she goes downstairs, with all the necessary accoutrements to put her plan into action. The sight she's met with is a pitiful one, to say the least. Sherlock is slouching in his chair with his legs stretched out in front of him, clutching a plate of corn around his shoulders while he shivers, his teeth audibly clicking together. She chuckles and he glares daggers at her, but the effect is diminished significantly due to his ashen complexion and red nose. A battlefield of tissues lay scattered around him, and she can see where the trail leads back to the kitchen. She sets down the quilt and paracetamol and goes to fill the hot water bottle and turn on the electric kettle. "You're loving this," Sherlock says when she comes back in, humming under her breath. She kneels down and undoes his shoes. His legs drop bonelessly back to the floor with a pathetic thud. "Yup," she says, and helps him to his feet. "Go get comfortable and come back out here." "Unless you feel tired enough to sleep," she says innocently. "It's 8 o'clock in the evening, Jane. I'm not going to bed like some old man." Sherlock grumbles and shuffles back to his room, still clinging to his Okan like, well, an old man. She can barely contain her glee and goes into the kitchen to make Sherlock a cup of chamomile tea with extra honey. He shuffles back out a few minutes later, and Jane shucks the thin of corn from around him and replaces it with her fluffy quilt. She adjusts it, much to his annoyance, and maneuvers him to sit on the sofa. His teeth chatter comically, and she puts the warm cuppa into his hands. "Drink that, because I'm guessing you didn't find the cough drops," Jane says with a smile and puts her hand on his forehead. "You don't seem to have a fever as of yet, so you can tuck the hot water bottle under the blankets with you if you want." Sherlock grimaces as he finishes the last dregs of his tea and eagerly accepts the water bottle. He groans appreciatively as he holds it between his frozen fingers for a moment before it disappears beneath the quilt. She hums and puts the Union Jack pillow on the coffee table so he can prop his feet up. There. All comfy? Getting warm? She asks. Yes. He huffs grudgingly and takes a few paracetamol from her. Good, she says with a cruel twist of her lips. Now it's time for entertainment. Entertainment? Sherlock grasps, arching an eyebrow. Jane pulls out her final implement of torture and takes out the disc. She tosses the DVD case onto Sherlock's lap and makes her way to the television. Diamonds are forever? He says in horror. I told you I would get you to watch a Bond film with me. Maybe that will teach you that I don't make idle threats either, Mr. Culturally Oblivious. Just kill me instead. I'll tell you how to get away with it and everything. Sherlock moans and brings the quilt up over his head. Oh no, Jane says and pulls the quilt back down. It's either you watch this with me or go to bed. Those are your options. She sits down next to him and clicks the play button. Sherlock crosses his arms in a huff and scowls at the screen. And Jane smiles at her victory. Her victory is short-lived, however, and Sherlock begins to ridicule the telly with, "There's no way that revolver would work after being submerged in the mud like that." And, "Scalpels? Really? Blofeld needs new henchmen if they can be felled by a handful of scalpels when they have semi-automatic machine guns at their disposal." And, "No, no, no! A scorpion sting is rarely potent enough to kill a fully grown man." Sherlock, the point of this movie isn't to be logical. Now shut up and watch it. Jane snaps. All I'm saying is the methods employed by Bond. Jane unwraps the throat lozenge and crams it into his mouth before he can finish the sentence, and he grumbles unintelligibly but remains quiet for the time being. After a while, Sherlock says, "You really like this, don't you?" I may be enjoying a bit of payback, but no, Sherlock. I don't revel in the fact that you've got flu. It's no fun. Probably for me more than you, considering I'll be the one making sure you get better from it, you git, she says and knocks her knee into his. No, I mean the movie, Sherlock says. What? Yeah, of course I do. It's a classic, she says. But it's so bad, Sherlock says, flinging an arm out to concede his point. Jane laughs. Yeah, it is pretty bad. She laughs again as 007 hijacks a moon buggy and outruns his aggressors in the Nevadan desert. But that's the point, I think. My dad loved these movies. She trails off thoughtfully. Sherlock grunts. So as a doctor, do you prescribe hackneyed espionage movies to all your patients with flu? It depends. Is it working? Sherlock grunts again and burrows deeper into the quilt as an answer. Jane suppresses a smirk, and they spend the remainder of the movie in silence. However, when Sherlock's eyes drift shut, and he ends up with his head on Jane's shoulder, she can't help but chuckle softly. The end.